Hello and welcome to Running Your Stories. This is a new podcast that we're launching here. We're put together by myself, Kevin Robinson, and my good friend Wane. We would like to say thank you very much to Lois Idale of Lois Creations for this fantastic artwork that she's produced here for Running Your Stories. Look Lois up if you're looking for a fantastic graphic designer to do any work for you. Thank you very much again, Lois. So the first episode that we're going to put out here is an introduction to Wane and I. We're going to have a chat, talk a little bit about why we're doing this podcast and what it's all about. Let's get on with it. Thank you.
Oh, that's what that noise is.
Yes, not what we thought.
Yeah, we'll cut this bit out at the start.
That's fine.
So, we're here for a conversation and a discussion about running, and our aim with this is to focus on the extraordinary stories that we know and we know will come out from people who are ordinary runners. So we're talking about the people in the middle of the pack, at the back of the pack, not the 1, 2, 3 at the front. Not to say that we'll rule people out just because they've won one race, mind, but we've been having the discussions and we've found that there's a lot of really interesting stories out there for ordinary runners, which we can probably just about put ourselves into that category.
Well, yeah. I mean, we are basically middle of the field backwards. We're not really going to take a podium position unless no one else turns up on race day. And if that does happen, I do want us to record that story as well, because I think it's just as important for everyone to hear that. But no, I do totally agree. It's the middle of the pack backwards that are the ones that have got the real stories that real people can relate to, and that's what we want to try and get out there on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a good place to start, and the reason we're starting here ourselves, is just to tell a little bit about our own stories and where we've been, a little bit about what we've done, where we're at. Partly just to break the ground and for the people that we invite along, that hopefully will accept the invitation to show them what it's about.
Well, in some ways, give them an idea of what we're going to expect from them.
Exactly.
Rather than it just being us in annoying creaky chairs. It's really going to drive me mad. Yeah. So where was your first race then that you remember? What was that?
In my late teens, early 20s, I was at university here in Huddersfield, in fact, and at the time I was in the Territorial Army, running around the countryside on a weekend, and so because of that, I was a young guy running around the hills. I was quite fit, and I remember taking part in Meltham 10k and taking part in 2 or 3 half marathons.
Has it been going that long? Meltham 10k.
Whether it was exactly the same race at the time, I think it was actually. Yeah, I think it has been going that long. But as you say, very middle of the pack. I mean, I always remember when I did my first half marathon, the furthest I'd run as a run before that day was about 6 miles. I knew I was young and I was fit. I had this invincibility belief.
What was your first half marathon though? What was that?
It was the Leeds half marathon.
Leeds half, right, okay.
And yeah, I'd only run 6 miles before, turned up to do the 13.2, and I ran it as if I was going to run 6 miles. So I just ran at my pace, my 6 mile pace, and I just kept going. And to this day, that's still the fastest half marathon I've done.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. And now older and slightly wiser, would you be doing the same pace again, or would that be something?
I believe actually, if I went to an equivalent event now, I could run faster than that.
That's good to hear.
Because I've been doing a lot of training in the last year, and I believe I'm a lot fitter than I was then. But now it would be done a little more on purpose than it was then.
So at the time you were basically just an accidental runner.
Yes.
And then from the Meltham 10k and a couple of half marathons, what did you lead on to from there?
So from there, and it was predominantly because I wasn't training properly. I was just rocking up as a young guy and doing things. I ended up with issues with my IT bands, and I really just fell out with running. And so I got into mountain climbing, and other than the odd training run here and there just to try and stay fit, I didn't run again until 2016.
Right, okay, so that's a fair break.
Yes.
But you'd kept some sort of fitness in between anyway, hadn't you? It's not, you'd not given up altogether.
No, that's right. I'd initially maintained quite a high level of fitness. Got into mountain climbing and went up a few very interesting routes. Then my first child came along, and I stopped playing football and stopped a few other things. Just gradually, kind of, family life took over, and then we had twins, and that's a very, very full-time commitment. Around that kind of time, I'd also joined Mountain Rescue. I'm an active call-out member with Home Valley team. And so I've always maintained some kind of base level of fitness. In 2016, I went out to the Alps to go back to mountain climbing after about a 10-year break. And I found that I was nowhere near fit enough. I'd been going to the gym, I'd been getting out walking. I thought I was doing all right. But I got a big shock as to how unfit I was. I was around the heaviest I'd ever been. I was at the point where I was thinking, I'm going to have to buy some bigger trousers because these don't fit me anymore. And I've been wearing the same size trousers for 15 years or more by then. And I decided I didn't want my story to continue in that direction. And it was somewhere around that time I expressed that to my dad, and he said to me, well, you're in your late 30s now, you've got kids, it's all downhill from here, you'll never be really fit again. And I remember swearing a lot in my head. I didn't say anything to him at the time because I'm somebody that likes to prove my point through my actions, not just through words. And so I just decided I'm going to work on this. And one of the effects I had of going out to the Alps and going up to not ridiculously high altitude, only up to about 3,500 meters, was that I heavily suffered with altitude sickness as soon as I went up high. And it was related to fitness, it was related to diet and a lot of other things, and some of it's just unpredictable. But I came back and I went to see my GP because I still couldn't breathe properly. And so the next Saturday that came around, I went along to Parkrun. And I went there with my son, and we kind of jogged around. I'll have to admit I was slightly hungover as well. And only halfway through the last lap, I said to him, do you mind if I just kind of run on a bit here and just sort of see what time I can get? And he was okay with that. And I finished in 29 minutes and 59 seconds. I was really happy to be under 30 minutes. And that was really the start of my journey of being back in running.
So that was back in 2016?
Yes.
Okay.
So that was back end of August 2016.
Right.
So yeah, from there, I went back to Parkrun the next week. Can't remember what the time was, I think 27 minutes or something like that. My lungs were starting to work a bit better. I remember in particular, I'd had another heavy night, and I went up to the northeast, which is where I'm from, to visit some family. And I just remember the air, I always find it just seems drier, fresher, colder than what it is in West Yorkshire, where it always seems a little bit damp. And all of that, when I came back on the Sunday evening, I went out for a run around, I think it's 4.6k, the particular sort of circuit I was doing there, and it just felt different. And I knew I was then starting to recover from the altitude and ready to push on to start to improve my fitness.
Right. So that's your parkrun. So where have you proceeded to from parkrun then? From stepping up to parkrun and realising that you can get your fitness back if you want it back, and you obviously had a desperate need to get that back.
Well, what I found was that parkrun remained a big focus for many months. I found the social aspect, the other people I knew that were turning up to parkrun, other friends, family that some of whom I invited along, others that were going anyway. Other people that I vaguely knew that I kept bumping into there. So parkrun has kept me coming back, and I still go to parkrun on any Saturday morning where I'm not out doing something else. And my time just started dropping, and like I say, 29 minutes 59 seconds. I think my PB now on the same course is 19 minutes and 46 seconds.
This is Huddersfield.
This is Huddersfield, yeah. Right. So yeah, I've taken a third off the time, down to a respectable level. But you know, to kind of answer your question, that yes, moved on from there in that I found for me myself, my interests, my sort of physical makeup, that trying to get a faster and faster 5k time isn't my main focus. I've kind of just levelled out at around the 20-minute mark. I'm quite happy running 5k in 20 minutes. I never thought I'd be that fast.
A lot of people would be quite happy with 5k in 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, you kind of find your level that you're happy with. And I find that if I try to train to run faster, it hurts, and it hurts a lot. So what I then switched over to was looking at distance. And so I thought, well, I've run half marathons before. I heard about some local group putting together a Huddersfield half marathon. I thought I'd better get involved with that.
Yeah, I remember that rumour.
What I didn't realise at the time was it's actually really quite a tough half marathon.
No, it's almost all downhill. It's a Huddersfield half marathon.
It is circular, however, so the amount of downhill, you kind of have to do the uphill first, or the other way around. Almost. But yeah, there's the same amount of uphill and downhill. And so again, I got a bit surprised when I started trying to run now on, I'd say, properly hilly ground. But I trained for that, and with it being a much tougher course than like the Leeds, which was my previous sort of fastest, my aim was just to get under 2 hours, which I think is a very respectable kind of time, and I achieved that and was very happy. And by this time I was starting to already potentially write checks that my body couldn't cash, let's say.
So you were already at that time looking at much bigger
yes.
challenges, shall we say?
Yes, because what I was finding is that as I started to train properly and think about stretching and think about not just blindly going out running whenever you feel like it, but actually having some kind of structured training plan, and cross training, as in doing multiple disciplines. I also do bits of swimming, go to the gym regularly, a little bit of cycling. A few people who know me well will laugh when I talk about my cycling, but through all these things I found that as long as I did things in the right way, my body was responding very positively, and I started to truly believe I could have much grander aims and potentially achieve them.
Right.
So
done now.
So but what had also happened through volunteering with Mountain Rescue, in the January of 2017, I'd been on an aid station on a little race called the Spine Race, which was beyond my imagination at that point in time. But talking to the competitors as they came through, I was handing out cups of tea and coffee and just chatting to them, and I could see how tough their experience was, and just trying to cheer them up a bit and be friendly, and it was such a fantastic atmosphere.
So if you were on the aid session, what location was that?
That was at what's locally known as Brun Clough, but for some reason on the Spine Race tracking is called Harropdale, which I don't know if you know the reason for why it's called Harrop or Harropdale.
I have no.
Whereas everybody knows
No.
It's at Brun Clough Reservoir at the side of the A62. But it's
I've got no idea why it's called Harropdale. Hopefully someone else will tell us why.
Yeah, it's something I keep meaning to look into or ask Scott or one of the other organisers about. But
it must be his extensive local knowledge. That's what it would be.
I'm not sure. It's
so then basically you did what happens with a lot of people at my events. You came along, you volunteered to assist at an event, you had a chat with some of these godlike athletes that were going through, realised that it's quite achievable.
I wouldn't say I realised it was achievable. I remember I had quite a long conversation with one particular person who I've seen since, and although I very rarely see them, I kind of, you start to consider these people friends as time goes on. And he was doing the 268-mile full spine race.
So full distance.
Yes, and he was quite clearly trying to convince
just
me.
for those who don't know, where does the spine race start and finish?
Yeah, so the spine race starts in Edale in Derbyshire and follows the Pennine Way through the middle of the hills up the spine of the country, and the Challenger event is up to Hardrow in Wensleydale.
So just over 100 and some miles then.
Yeah, officially 108 miles,
Okay.
Actually more like 115, 120 miles these days.
Is that your navigation or is that the course?
Yeah, well, that's another story. And what we call the full spine race is the entire Pennine Way, which is 268 miles up to Kirkgate in Scotland.
So that's from Edale all the way up the Pennine Way to Kirkgate.
Yes. So
On the 5th of July, on a nice sunny day.
No, this is the middle of January, in the middle of winter.
So they basically pick the worst time of year to put a race on.
The most interesting time of year, where you have, out of your 24-hour clock, you have 8 hours of daylight and 16 hours of darkness. And that brings a lot of challenges. But I looked at it and talked to the competitors, and I thought, this is really what I want to aspire to, because it's not just the physical challenge. There's getting the equipment right, there's using the mountaineering skills, using the navigation skills. Then you have to get your nutrition right. And it's kind of like it's almost an expedition. The difference being that you're one person. It's not just rocking up in your trainers, your shorts and your vest, and grabbing some water from a water station. Exactly.
Yeah. So you're self-sufficient basically for the whole race?
Yes.
Right, okay.
And so I secretly, actually, even as early as January 2017, set that as my target. And I started whispering it to some close friends a few months later, having them sworn to secrecy. And then, so I did the Huddersfield Half Marathon. And I thought I was becoming Superman, hitting every target in sight by then. So I went and did the Home Moss Fell race, and it absolutely destroyed me.
But Chris, that's another fairly flat race as well.
Not exactly. Everybody enjoyed watching the Tour de France going up the hill at Home Moss. In the Home Moss Fell race, you run up and down that hill 2 or 3 times.
That's special.
Yeah, and the Tour de France cyclists see that as a, don't get me wrong, I was there and I saw them coming up it, and they went up it faster than I could have imagined, faster than a lot of cars drive up it, but they still see that as a challenging hill.
Yeah.
And so, yes, taking that on, the issue I had actually on the day was that I didn't yet have the experience of how much energy it takes to get your body up and down that many hills. And I just ran out of energy, and I ran out of spare food, and I was starting to crash. My blood sugar was crashing through the floor. I was just exhausted. Thankfully, my colleagues from Mountain Rescue were out supporting the race, and I saw one of them, and he gave me a couple of chocolate bars. Within 2 minutes of that, I ran to the finish. It was just
so valuable
just
lessons.
a valuable lesson.
Yeah.
Energy deficit.
Yeah.
I was lucky in that I didn't need rescue, and I didn't put anybody else in danger. I learned the lesson in a good, safe way.
Yeah.
But I think unless you push yourself that hard, you don't really come up against these lessons. So that was a good lesson. Actually, I'd also done things like the Yorkshire Three Peaks as an attempted run walk, I had some similar lessons there as well. And so these lessons were starting to sink in, and so I decided at this point I'd train for my first marathon. And with my end objective in mind, I decided that training to do just a marathon distance wasn't enough. Probably should have been, and I should have been quite happy with that. So I dismissed doing something like a Chester, which is reputed to be the flattest, easiest marathon in the UK, or the fastest, shall we say. I don't think any marathon's easy. No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't take that away from anybody. And so then I thought, well, what about Kielder, which is also quite flat, but now on a trail, which is a lot more appealing to me. Out in beautiful countryside, looks like a fantastic event. But then I heard about this Forest and Moors Marathon, organised by Scarborough and Rydale Mountain Rescue Team, and I thought actually it would be really good to go along and support that team by paying my entry fee and turning up there with their new event, and that was tougher than I thought. Overall, I guess you'd have to say it went well. I finished 7th.
No, that's not too bad.
That's not bad at all. Now, as you rightly pointed out earlier, we're quite average runners, and if you don't have a lot of people turning up, you can get quite high place potentially. What I would say is that there was a lead pack, and there was a chasing pack, and then there was the middle sort of pack, and I was in the chasing pack, in the middle of the chasing pack, when you actually look at the times that people came in, and again, I was fantastically happy that I trained hard, I had a good program, and that kind of shows what my body could achieve.
Right.
Mentally very, very tough, and I had a good psychological battle with some other runners towards the end who were far more experienced runners than me, and so I was actually running along in about 9th place, and I noticed the 2 people ahead of me, every time they came up to a gate or a stile, they were having 3, 4, 5 slow steps as they approached it, 2 or 3 slow steps to get away from it. And I thought, I don't have the energy to run faster than them on the flat open ground, but if I slam into this gate without slowing down and straight off again, I can catch them up. And I did.
Right.
And I caught them up, and then we came to a steep hill, and I managed to just step in front of them. And I thought, if I just run 5 or 6 steps further up the hill than they run, it'll start to make them think I'm a better runner, which I really wasn't. And it worked, and I finished ahead of them. And not because I was a better runner.
But
I just
played again.
I just played it, yeah. And the interesting thing about that was it kept my mind busy, and I think it made me run a lot faster than I would have done, because otherwise I would have thought about how exhausted I was, how much pain I was in, and playing that game was just kind of...
Right, so in some ways, rather than concentrating on your own pain and suffering and misery, you concentrate on giving pain, suffering and misery to someone else in the race.
In the most friendly way,
Yeah.
yes. Yes.
That sounds like a good plan, this.
Yeah, it was.
I'll take that one on board. That.
Yeah, well, I would kind of wish I'd remembered that a bit more, because by this time I had actually signed up to the Spine and decided that, okay, I've done all this running, lightweight running, really. I was wearing a hydration vest at this to do that kind of distance, to make sure I had spare waterproofs and water and things with me, but not really carrying any weight as such. And in the Spine race, there's a very extensive compulsory kit list that you need to carry, which has significant weight. So I thought, well, I better start looking towards training for that and practicing for that. And then I thought, well, you know, there is an ultra event locally, and it's like literally on my doorstep. It's only a few weeks away, and I'm kind of really fit with my running right now. Maybe I can just push on to that. And so I entered the White Rivers Ultra after having a few days recovery from the marathon and deciding, yeah, this recovery is going well enough. So 4 weeks, it's not even a calendar month, 4 weeks after doing my first marathon, I did my first ultra.
Right. And again, you chose a nice flat. Yeah.
Yeah, a trail ultra, nice and hilly. And it was a great event. Interestingly, there was some lessons there to be learnt that I didn't really take on board at the time, but have later, since the Spine, and I ended up in quite a lot of pain towards the end of that. Shins hurting because of muscles swelling up just due to the sheer effort involved. Nothing serious long term, but I really slowed down because of that and probably lost 20 places or something towards the end of the race, which was a little disappointing, but got my first ultra under my belt, so can't be disappointed in that.
Yeah, do you think that's something that will be improved on for next time through training, nutrition, or just simply the knowledge of it happening in the past? Know what to expect.
There's two elements to it that will improve. One is the way I understand, and I'll often, by the way, say things like the way I understand, because I'm not an expert in training. I'm not a qualified personal trainer. I have spoken to some fine experts that have given me some great advice, and I've read a lot, and so I'll just try and make it clear that some of this stuff's my opinion and accumulated knowledge rather than professional opinion. Exactly. And what I understand to be the case is that it's the recovery that strengthens you and builds you, not the training itself. You need to damage your body by running, by using the muscles and deplete them. And when they recover, then they get stronger. And it's the recovery that actually makes them stronger.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. So with it being the first time that I ran over 30 miles, that was the first time my muscles had experienced that. And so they would not really know how to react to it. So the next time you run 30 miles, as long as they've had the chance to recover properly and you've maintained your fitness, the pain should be a lot less.
Yeah.
In fact, I can tell you it is, because I've since ran more than a lot more than 30 miles, and the pain didn't come on until way past 50.
Right.
So I know that works for me, which is, as I say, I'm probably not explaining it scientifically accurately, but
no, it's how you understand it, and that's what matters.
Exactly. That's the way I understand it, is that you need to train and stress your body, but then it's really important that you let your body recover.
Yeah. And
that's actually what really I find.
I do think it's one of the big mistakes a lot of people make is recovery. They don't allow for recovery.
Yes.
They think it's just putting the miles in, and it's not. The recovery is just as important, if not more important. Than
exactly. I believe it's more important.
Yeah.
So you allow yourself to recover. That's when you can then come back stronger and push on from there. And so in that sense, if I went and did another 30-mile ultra now, I would expect that side of things to be a lot better. Maybe not today, but another few weeks.
If you've maintained your fitness in between, then you should be able to go
exactly.
and be back on it.
Yes, but then the other side is the psychological side, which is massively important, potentially a lot more so. Because what I've learned since then is that when I get in pain like that, I'm starting to tell myself that this is painful, there's some damage done somewhere, because that's what pain is telling you, that you better kind of slow down and look after yourself. What I've since learned is that with the level of fitness it takes to do an event like that, my recovery is... Now, I'm not talking about total recovery where you're ready to race at your best potential again, but I'm talking about recovery to the point where things no longer hurt. From an event like that, it's probably 4 or 5 days till I'm not hurting anymore. If I pushed myself to run at full speed to the end, I might push that recovery up to 5 or 6 days instead of 4 or 5 days. So if I want to push on, I can. And it's a psychological choice, not a physical limitation. And I think that's one of the biggest things that people learn through experience with running. In that feeling tired, feeling like you can't go on, feeling in pain, like you've done too much. These things can come in waves. And when you continue, and I find it's when you've made the real decision that I'm just going to try and ignore this and keep going for now because I really want to continue in this event, then actually the pain, it subsides. If you start thinking about it again, it's still there. It hasn't gone. But it becomes less of your main focus.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for being able to control what your body's doing with your mind and being able
Yes.
to use that power to be able to get through what's
Yeah.
going on. But also, I think you do need to listen to what your body's telling you. That's quite
Absolutely.
that's a big mistake a lot of runners make, is that they don't listen to what's
Yes.
going on.
And I think this is where, for me personally, I have a very big distinction about how I respond to that kind of pain in training and at an event. At an event, I've trained myself and I'm giving it my all, and I know after this event I am going to rest and recover, and I'm going to spend as much time as it takes to rest and recover before the next event. In training, if I get in anything like the pain that I was in the White Rose Ultra or in the spine race, I will stop.
Yeah.
And I mean, I will stop. And I'll phone somebody to come and pick me up, because it's a very different thing. Training for me is about controlled stressing of the body to the right level where you know you're going to recover from it, because when you then do an extreme event, especially when you're pushing the limits of what I've done before, and I'm going, especially when I went from doing 30 miles to over 100 miles, that is going to take some massive recovery, and that's part of what I know I've signed up to. And that's a huge spike, and then like a kind of huge trough, and I'm going to lose some fitness in that time. When I'm training, I don't want to be having a big trough where I'm losing fitness. I know I'm going to need recovery, and so I don't want to spike the loading on my body too much, because I don't want then the big trough that has to come after it, where I'm just literally sitting with my feet up, which I'd say through the whole of 2017, as I was ramping up from running less than 10 miles to preparing to run over 100 miles, I don't think there was a single day where I actually sat with my feet up.
But that's just good training. That's you that's able to look at your training and do it properly, isn't it? That's
Yes.
You're probably more in depth with what you're doing training wise than what a lot of people are.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things I found about fitness, and because my focus all the time has just been to try and get as fit as I possibly could. I haven't been too focused on let's try and get my 5k time up, or let's try and get my 10k time up. Now I've been recording my parkrun times, because actually the lovely, fantastic volunteers at parkrun record it for you, and that's absolutely brilliant. And that's one of the things I love about it. You go along there completely free, and you get very close to professional time and service. Really high quality service, considering it's all completely free and voluntary. So it's brilliant. So, and then, as a lot of people do, I got into putting these things on Strava, so you can see how you've done and see how it compares to the previous time. But I'm not somebody that gets too hung up on the times. I know I have good days and bad days, good weeks and bad weeks. I've got a family. I've got 3 kids. I volunteer for Mountain Rescue. We sometimes have call outs at 2 a.m. And so when I've had a call out at 2 a.m. and I've got back home at 6 a.m. and I woke up a little late for work at 9:30, I allow myself to not go for a training run that day. I think that's perfectly all right. And I think, again, that's a mistake some people make, is that they have a training plan and they try to make it too rigid.
But yeah,
You've got to listen to your body.
on having to do that 6 mile that day
Yes.
at that time. And if it doesn't happen, the whole life falls to bits.
That's right.
But no, you need that flexibility. You're a human being at the end of the day, and you've got a real life as well
Yes.
as a running life.
And so one of the things that I've tried to do, because to try and stay flexible but not lazy, because again, it's very easy to say, oh well, I'm a bit tired today, I'll have another day off.
I'm taking a year off. That's my training plan. It's a 10-year plan. That's it.
Yes. So I've built into my training a good level of walking, and I find walking is a really important part of my training. Every morning, I'll get up and I'll go for a walk before work, and at lunchtime I'll either be training or walking, because walking it's an important part of my training. But I generally don't record it on Strava. I generally don't really pay really close. I know some people would be surprised about that.
No. You just press the button and it's on Strava. You don't have to do anything. It's really important that it goes on Strava.
I don't know. However, maybe I'll try recording 2 or 3 weeks of my walk and see what it's like, because I got caught up with, let's say, some things like you have these monthly elevation challenges and things like that. And in November 2017, I signed up to that, and I think there was only one person that I know well that actually did more elevation gain than myself in November, which was really close to the peak of my training, which is why I was interested to see how I compared to other people. But even then, I wasn't putting on all of my walking.
Right.
And some people were.
That was just your running.
That was just my running.
Right.
There was only our friend Howard who was ahead of me on the elevation
he did
game.
do a lot of training.
He did a lot of training.
Yeah, but actually he did then suffer through basically overtraining.
Yes.
And he confesses that himself.
Yeah, because one of the things I've learned along the way is the importance of the intensity of your training. And again, this is something I'm not an expert about, so I probably won't explain it too well, but the very basic rule is that you should only do 20% of your training at 80% or above of your capability, essentially. You're quite welcome to explain it better.
And so very recently it's been very much the idea that you should go out there and hammer every single mile and not have any junk miles, or as they're called, which has just been completely overturned. It's completely rubbish. You should be doing about 80% of your mileage at a steady, consistent pace or fartlek training, so you can, we should be able to go out now and have this conversation while you're doing your run.
Yes.
And then only 20%, so 2 miles in every 10 should be at your race pace or above, but preferably above race pace, and that's probably the best way to build endurance and move forward. Which for me is great, because I'm such a slow, lazy runner. I just do 100% of my running at that, and I'm hoping that I don't ever have to do the 20% then. Time will tell.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is where I find walking, and when I say walking, I'm talking about walking at a fast pace that does raise your heart rate, but doesn't mean that I need to go and have another shower. And that's one of the reasons why I walk twice a day and run once, because I don't want to have 3 showers a day, and I don't want to smell too much. And so this is where, my thinking is, and I have heard some top ultra runners actually do some similar training. I don't remember their names because we're not focused on the top ultra runners here, but I was just interested when I heard one of them actually trains in a similar way, because the fast-paced walking, as far as your body's concerned, obviously counts for some of those steady miles.
Yeah.
And therefore, when you've got the time to go and do your proper run in your proper running shoes, and you've got changed, and you know you're going to have a shower afterwards, then you can go for it a bit more. Yeah. And so you're getting that 80-20, quite a big part of it by walking.
I think in the running world, it's very easy to get fixated on running. Yes. And forget that you actually need to do other things to be able to run, and other things will be just as beneficial as going out and killing yourself for 5k.
Yes.
And there's
and again,
easily overlooked.
The pace I swim at is also a steady pace. So nice bit of swimming in there goes along nicely. So
probably not as steady as my swimming at the moment. I discovered I could alter the length of the pool on my watch, so it's dropped down from being a 29 metre pool to a 20 metre pool. So my Strava's a little bit more accurate today.
I did see your swimming on Strava recently and thought, gee, Wane swims a lot faster than me.
That's all it's down to. I discovered this morning that I've been swimming. Well, my watch has started swimming in a 29 metre pool, and it's actually on 20.
Yeah,
I've altered it now, so we're all good. It's all above board.
Yeah, because I read an article which it was one of these headline newspaper articles, which I really hate, but sometimes you can't help but read them, and it had one of the horrible kind of I'll catch your attention by almost telling a lie to you kind of headlines. It was something along the lines of 10,000 steps a day is dead. It's the wrong thing to do. Yeah. And like most of these kind of what I would consider to be junk articles, surprisingly, this one was on the BBC, which don't usually go all out for the complete junk. But I'm not saying that they're infallible, but they don't usually go all out for the complete junk.
They did a TV, like a sciencey TV program on
I know the one
10,000 miles. It was quite good, actually.
But this what this was saying was that the 10,000 steps was a fairly arbitrary thing that came out of Japan when they were trying to get people fit over there. Whereas it's been scientifically proven that going for even a shorter walk 3 times a day is more beneficial.
Yeah.
Now, my opinion is actually that doesn't mean the 10,000 steps is out the window, because if you go for 3 walks a day and do 10,000 steps, isn't that perfect?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
it's not that the 10,000 steps is wrong or out of the window at all, and there was actually no reason to try and grab headlines like that. But the fact that raising your heart rate multiple times a day is more beneficial than one long session is something I'd kind of slowly learned over the years myself, and I'm very happy to see that's scientifically proven. And it's also why people know that high intensity training works well. And so this is why I'm, like I say, a big believer in doesn't matter what you're capable of. Olympic marathon runners, for example, will go out and run 3 or more times a day. Now, of course they will. They're professional athletes. They've got nothing else to do. Their bodies are made for doing it.
Some of them have other things to do, but yeah.
Well, I'm talking about the gold medal winners, the very top end.
The other side of that as well, they've got a team behind them. They've got nutritionalists. They've got
exactly
therapists. They've got everybody there to put.
But this is where I think when you sort of bring this down to ordinary people, which is what we're really focused on, is it isn't about trying to say to an ordinary person you should be out running 3 times a day to be as healthy as you can be. Well, that's actually really not practical. I'm somebody that tries to train as much as I can, and it's not practical for me to go near that. Whereas it is practical to just get out of the house for even a 10-minute walk 2-3 times a day.
Yeah.
On your lunch break, just have a 10-minute walk before you eat your lunch, and you'll find it very, very quickly can become a habit, and it can make you feel better and make you want to do more. And that's what I found, and that was one of the first changes I made after that 2016 trip out to the Alps where I was totally unfit, and I thought I've got to change my lifestyle in a sustainable way. I just started doing these walks, and then from there, because at the time I could only run once, twice, up to 3 times a week, and I was walking twice a day. And now I'm running. At the height of my training, I'm running 6 days a week,
right?
And I'm either walking or training 3 times a day, and that's kind of the height I've got to. But I wouldn't advise anybody to try and jump to that. You've got to go step by step, and for me, the most important step is doing things little and often before you try to do
I think
big
it's
things.
setting up things that are sustainable, things that you will continue to do, rather than just things that are a bit of a whim and I'll do this today and I'll do it tomorrow, but then by the end of the week you've given up all drive and you're not doing it at all, which is just pointless. It needs to be stuff that you're just going to achieve.
It just jumped into my head at this point, the conversation I had with my wife this morning. I was dropping her car off at the garage and told her to take my car to work, and she says, "So how are you going to get back from the garage?" I said, "Well, I'll walk." And she looked at me a little bit strange. It's about 4 kilometres, or actually probably closer to 2 miles from the garage to my house. And she looked at me like, "Do you want to walk that far?" And I looked at her and said, "I can walk 100 miles, you know."
Yeah.
And she said, "Fair point."
But using if you use that theory, then you've got the choice of many a garage in the area, haven't you? Yeah.
Well, that's right. And the whole reason why and this is about how you can fit these things into your lifestyle. And that because I usually go for a 20-minute walk in the morning, to drop a car off at a garage and then do a sort of 35-minute walk home, it's only extending my walk by 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It's
Yeah, so again, you're getting that.
It's actually
it's achievable. Isn't
yeah,
it?
it's just that I usually have the walk and then have breakfast. This morning I had breakfast and then had the walk. And so
Yeah.
it's actually made very little difference to my day.
That's true.
No, the walk down to here, mind, that was a little bit longer.
Yeah, but you don't have that far to walk back, do you? You've only got to go
No, that's
pick the car up and get home from there. So.
But again, it's like I say, it's just about all the time looking at how you can build these things into your lifestyle. Again, from my house to the sort of local shop where I might pop out for some bread and milk kind of thing, I did used to find myself driving and thinking, why am I driving this? It's only a mile, I think, possibly less than a mile. And now I never do.
Yeah, it's really funny.
It's just changing that habit.
We had that conversation the other day when I was up at your house, and it was really funny. I actually, rather than driving to the shop a couple of nights ago, I just put shoes on and walked to the shop. Something I've not done in a long time. I thought, this is ridiculous. It takes, and literally, it takes me as long to find my keys, get in the car, sort stuff out, get there, park the car up, and do it all in reverse, as it did to actually just walk out the door, walk to the shop, and walk back, and the job's done.
Yeah,
and I felt that I could have the two Easter eggs that I bought, and I didn't feel any guilt whatsoever. It was great.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I find about it as well is driving can be stressful, whereas a walk like that is very rarely stressful.
Yeah,
very rarely. Anything in life can be stressful. You can go off on a chain of thought. You can get a phone call on the way. You know, things can.
But there is something quite relaxing about walking.
Yes.
It just takes a couple of steps and you're into it, and then
yes,
it's quite nice and it's easy and anybody can do it. It's
and,
not,
and you can distract yourself and have a chain of thought while you're walking. Whereas I do advise people to concentrate on the driving when they're on the road. It's advisable.
I mean, no one warned me that when I took my test. No, there is that. I think for everyone that's a super simple way of upping your exercise and improving your running just through doing, which is, it's cross training at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't require, like you said, it doesn't require putting shorts and trainers on and getting sweaty.
Yeah.
You can do that and then get back to work afterwards and continue.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. So that's quite a lot about my journey into running, which I was almost into running, probably. I'd done a few half marathons, and I had a very long break, longer than the time I was into running. I've got back into it now, and now I have to say it feels like a lot more of a lifestyle choice, and I've been purposefully trying to build my training and everything else in a sustainable way to make it a lifestyle choice. Because I mentioned about being at the stage where I was going to have to go out and buy new trousers because I couldn't fit into them. I am actually at the stage where I've got to go and buy new trousers because they're too big for me, and I can't wear them without a belt.
That's kind of cool though.
It is.
But at least you can keep hold of the trousers you've got now, and then one day you will get back into them.
I hope not.
Or on the winter days when you need an extra layer, you can put a jumper or two on, and you'll be fine. Yeah.
But I have had to invest in new clothing because my clothes are too big for me.
Yeah. So I mean, barring injury or anything silly like that, do you see this now as your life?
I do,
the training
because
that you're doing at the moment, or
I guess I see it as a lifestyle. I don't see anything negative with being that bloke who always claims to walk down to the shop. Does he not have a car? I don't mind if people say that. I love the fact that I turn up to park run and there's a bunch of people there who recognise me, maybe don't know me properly, but I've seen him here plenty of times before. And recently I started running with a new group of people who I'd met at an interesting series of events, the Urban Nights series, which I found a nice bit of practice before I went to do the spine race, because it involved navigating at night, running at night, and generally trying not to be too late back, which I failed at, but it's all good experience.
You and quite a few others, haven't you? Yeah.
But I bumped into some people there who we got on very well, and then got invited along to a group of people, because most of this training, this sort of journey, has been making my own choices, which some of it is very, very satisfying, I have to say. Training in my own way, doing my own thing. Invited along to a very experienced group of runners, and I found middle of the pack. And usually when I consider myself a complete novice at certainly at events of running, because I've done very few events. I have quite a small collection of finishers medals. I have to say that I've never started an event and not finished it. That will happen one day, I'm
I
sure.
quite like that. I can give you a short list of DNFs if you want.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with them. I'm quite proud of them.
Yeah, but it's great to be at that stage where you can go along to a new group and just kind of land yourself in the middle of there and feel confident that you can take part and sort of jump in, and I think that might lead on to some interesting things. So
I think your network will just get bigger and bigger, and the events, etc., that are put in your path there will just be more and more of them. I mean, the deeper you get into the running world, the more you discover. As an outsider, you only hear about the odd bits here of races here and there that are put in front of you, but there's a hell of a lot going on.
There is, and I feel like a child in a sweet shop, in that I've got my fitness to a stage whereby I can really pick and choose events, and I'm not going along to any event thinking I'm going to win it. There's some fabulous runners out there. It's, very gifted runners with lots of experience that have got everything sort of worked out and doing really, really well, and hats off to them. And I do aspire to be like that.
Yeah.
But what I'm lucky with right now is that I've got enough capability now that I know I can choose an event, I can go along and I can enjoy pushing myself in that event. And so I can start to look at some of the events in the Lake District or in Wales, and as well as I'll always be taking part in local events, because it's very convenient when you don't have to drive for a few hours to get there.
It also saves you a bloody fortune as well, because some of the stuff we've gone and done, and by the time you've actually driven there and had to have a hotel for 2 nights and all the rest of it, it becomes ridiculous.
It can, but there's some, as you say, there's some fabulous events around, and so many of them that I'm just looking forward to getting back to peak fitness
and how long do you think that's going to take now? Because I mean, it's been how many weeks since the spine now?
5 weeks, I think. I'm on now. So, well, last Saturday I ran at a slow pace, around half marathon distance. This Saturday I'm planning on getting up to about 30k.
Right.
So I'm just building it up. Just very conscious of just doing a bit further distance, making sure I recover from it, and then take it a bit further, because it was a huge shock to my body, pushing on from, my longest training run I think was 46 miles, and that was quite a slow paced one because it was an overnighter.
I mean, to be fair, 46 miles to the normal anybody would be a huge shock to the system, so going beyond that is not normal.
No,
really.
No, not at all.
You're a very special group of people. It's a minority group.
Yes, but and I am very interested in this ultra distance running. I find it very interesting and a very different kind of challenge. I think where I'd gone wrong, and the reason I fell out with running previous time, is because I had this idea that I had to go faster. And
you were chasing times rather than chasing an experience. Yeah.
Exactly. Whereas now, although of course, I feel that I'm fitter, I'm stronger, I feel that I can go faster, and I believe I can, and I know I will. But that's not the main thing now. I'm just a bit older, and I think, well, actually, I'm out to enjoy life. I'm not there to waste my time. I'm going to go out and I'm going to do my best. I'm going to push myself hard, but it's more about the overall experience.
But it is. I also think any time that you're out there in the great outdoors, so to speak, you're not wasting time. You're being part of something amazing.
Yes.
And one of the beauties I found with the ultra running is that, mainly due to the pace that you're doing it, because it's such a long distance, is that you're able to actually absorb what you are out there in, rather than when you can't do a 10k or a 5k, you're so fixated on getting to that finish line. Quite often you miss everything along the route. All you see is the start line and the finish line, and you come away from it, and all you've got is what's on your wrist telling you, well, that's how fast I did it. But what you really want is...
You've seen your feet quite a lot.
Yeah.
Somebody else's heels.
The person on the back of the person in front of you. And that's it. Whereas with ultra running, it's by far the friendliest of the running
disciplines.
Yes. And And I think I personally think it's the most rewarding. I think you get the most out of it, and if you're looking for something that's going to give you long-term memories and something of that ilk, then it's ultra running.
Yeah, I mean, some of the memories that I scarcely get to talk to people about because there's so much else to talk about. On the spine race, I saw 3 mice, like little field mice. Really, the nice
a lot of
countryside mice
running for a while.
at the side of the path. These weren't hallucinations.
Right, I was trying to get at.
There's another entire story about hallucinations. I did have those, but
it's one of the benefits of ultra running.
But no, it was just being out in the countryside in the middle of the night on a path, often on your own, and you see wildlife and you see sunrises. In my training, I got there's one picture in particular. It was a spectacular sunrise with kind of snowy landscape in the background, and it's things like that. They're just it's absolutely amazing. Because who would be out at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday morning while the sun's coming up in the middle of winter, unless you've got something to really motivate you and push you to be there? I did actually meet a very strange gentleman on that training run, and he was regularly out at that time. And so there are people that...
when I was a lot younger, it would be quite a regular occurrence to be on my way home at that time. But yeah, I mean, with even my race pack now, I've taken a camera with me, and that's in my front pocket. So I've got I've got a bottle in one side, and there's a camera in the other side, just because you do end up seeing these things that you can't. Yeah,
no,
you wouldn't get anywhere near them in normal running and normal life.
Yes.
Should we conclude it at that?
I think so. I think so. That's.
I think the chair agrees.
That's my story, kind of bringing me up to date, and that hopefully some people find the story itself interesting. And I know some of my friends, some of the people I've met in running, have got really extraordinary stories about what's got them into running, why they go out running, why they're pushing themselves so far. And that's what I'm really looking to explore and have conversations with people about it.
I've personally been very privileged in the running community to have sat with many people over the years and discussed where they've come from, why they've come from it, where they're going, and had that. And I think it's going to be great. As what we're doing now is going to be a great way to hopefully share some of those stories with many people, and I think that's something we'll definitely achieve.
Yes.
We'll definitely get some of the there's some very good stories.
Yeah.
There's also some we won't be sharing. There's quite a mixture of history.
And what I would say is that depending on people's stage of their running, where they're at on their journey, where they want to go, our aim is to try and be very inclusive.
Yeah.
And so we will be specifically looking for people with stories at different levels. Stories of people reaching their first 5K, not just stories of people reaching their first 100 miles. Yeah. It's not just the first one. It's, everybody has different stories and they're at different levels, and that's what we're really interested in.
I think part of what we can achieve with this is allowing people to see how achievable all these different goals are, all these different distances, all these different things are. They're available to everyone, but quite often it's quite a fearful thing to if you've just run your first 5K and it's Saturday afternoon and you're watching this and then you're looking and thinking, there's a 10K next week. There's a huge difference, and it's quite fearful thinking. I'm still suffering now. I can't put my feet on the floor, and I've only run 5K. How on earth am I going to run 10K next week? Well, the thing is, you can, and we've been there, done that, and hopefully we're going to be able to share plenty of stories from other people that have been there, and just make it. It's about making running accessible to all, and that's what. Yeah, that's my whole history and life is about, trying to make it fun and accessible to everybody.
Absolutely, and as well as the sort of the physical development side of things, I know that a lot of people's stories are about the mental strength and the more psychological help that running's brought to them. I'm somebody who's, generally speaking, pretty successful in life. quite a strong person mentally, but I have to say that over the last year, having achieved what I've achieved, making my own decisions, training myself, I am stronger mentally than I've ever been before in my life. And I think it's part of the interesting aspect is that we're not talking about necessarily how, and we will be talking to some people that have been in some very dark places where running's helped them a lot. That's absolutely brilliant, and I know within up and down the country there are some superb charities particularly working with people on that. But there's also the aspect of people turning their lives around before they get to that dark place, and it can be really good to have prevention as well as cure. And yeah, I think running, being outside, having the right level of community is really important.
Yeah. It is. It's this whole holistic thing going on.
Yes,
and that's what we can show that, hopefully.
Yeah. Right.
Can I say this microphone now?
Yeah, we can add credits on and stuff later.
I'll have to get rid of that chair. Well, that wasn't so bad.
Got some bad news though.
What?
Oh no! When did the battery go flat?
On the phone?
I think so.